Hello, hi guys, welcome back to the channel. What's up? It's me, Kiran, your favorite booktuber, and it's really been a minute. I have been away from formal videos. Like, I've done a few live streams. It's been more than a month since I've posted a video. I don't really know what's going on. I just don't think I've been in the mood to film and edit and do the whole situation. But I've mostly been reading. I think I read not a lot in June, but I read like 13-14 books in May, and I'm actually coming from a new location. I just so happen to be in Mumbai. I will be in Bombay for probably the next couple of weeks. I've decided to spend the summer here with my sister who moved here last September. So that's kind of a quick little update, I guess you could say. More will be revealed, maybe. Hopefully I film and record and post this and all that jazz, but I thought I would come back to the channel, with the mid-year freakout tag. I don't know who the person is who originally created it. I know that this tag is quite prominent. It gets a lot of attention. I did this last year and this will be my second year doing it. So with all that preamble, let's just dive right into it. The first question, the best book you've read. Pause. Before we even get there, I did want to say, because we're talking about stats, right? So Jan through June, I read a total of 53 books. The goal, I think, is to read 104 books, because that would be like about 2 books a week. I think I'm kind of on track to do that. It would be cool if I could bump that up a little bit higher, but whatever, who cares? It's just reading. So now I'll get into it with the first question, which is the best book you've read in 2023. Speaking holistically, looking at all the reading that I've done a mix of fiction, nonfiction. I read all of International Booker, and I don't think I've really read a lot of things that I've been gunning for, though I do have to say the nonfiction I've been reading has been stellar. I've really enjoyed it. But when it comes to the fiction, the best books that I've read would have to be, and this is best in the terms of they were fun, they were exactly what I needed. It would be Exalted by Anna Dorn and My Husband by Maud Ventura, I believe her last name is. So I'm probably going to talk about those books quite a lot with a few of the questions that pop up later on. So just a heads up, Exalted tells the story of this young 20-something-year-old meme maker in LA who dreams of being an actress, but instead she makes astrology memes. So for all the astro girlies, this book is for you. It's a lot of fun. She basically becomes obsessed with this one guy whose chart she reads because his chart is exalted. Exalted means that, the sun is in the best, most prime position. That happens to be Aries. The moon is in the most exalted, highest, most venerated position. And so she's this guy is it. He has what I need, I need to go after him. And so alongside that story, we're then also seeing the story of this 40-year-old woman whose life is in shambles. She's a 40-year-old lesbian who can't keep a relationship together. She really acts out and chaos ensues. There's a lot of really fun commentary and satire on life. The next book is My Husband, which is about my husband. So basically in My Husband, this main character is obsessed with her husband. So we're tracking a whole entire week in her life, and she kind of has this intense protocol of, if my husband does X, I will do Y, and she's obsessed with him. He is her reason to be. She's obsessed with love, but it doesn't necessarily bring her happiness, and the ending really made it for me. It was wonderful. I am in love. The second book is the best sequel that you've read in 2023. I don't think I've read any sequels. This doesn't apply to me, though I did start a series. IDK if I will finish it. Probably will, but not yet. So I started Fortuna Sworn, which is highly, highly, highly recommended by Emmy. Fortuna Sworn is kind of like a Sarah J. Maas. It gives very heavy Sarah J. Maas vibes to me, but basically it's a story of this woman who's a night creeper, I don't know. She basically has a power, a nightmare, that's the word. She has a power, she touches you to know what your deepest, darkest, baddest secret is, and to kind of create a personal prison for you and, torture you. So she is looking for her brother. Her brother has been missing for a couple years now, and then this Fae guy comes up and he's like, hey, I know where your brother is, I can take you to him, but you have to marry me. and then Chaos. I thought it was really compulsive. I think there's like 5 or 6 books in the series, but I haven't gotten around to reading the rest of them. The third question is new releases you haven't read but want to. Truth be told, I don't really know what the new releases are necessarily that are popping up. I know that there's a new release in 2024 that I'm really interested in. It's a nonfiction book about Africa, like a really long 600-page history. I really hope they put that on audio because that's how I'd want to consume that, but that's not what we're here about. We're talking about 2023. The only 2023 release that I was interested in was Victory City by Salman Rushdie. That came out in Feb. I got my hands on it. I devoured it. Things were good. Now I'm chilling. Now the only thing that I could really anticipate, the only thing that I would be jazzed about would be if Ottessa were to draw a new novel. That's really about it. Otherwise, I don't care what's happening in the new releases, but obviously, you know, I see things and I get intrigued, but there's nothing that I'm like fiending for. Yeah, and then the fourth question kind of relates to that. It's the most anticipated release. Maybe I conflated questions 3 and 4, but number 4 is technically most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Once Victory City came out, I stepped away. I don't care. Okay, number 5 is we're changing tunes a little bit. We're changing it up. The biggest disappointment. I feel really bad saying that because it's like, that's a heavy word, you know, disappointment. That's big. I would have to say I feel like I've read quite a bit, but there hasn't been as many things that have really like grabbed me or that I've been truly enamored with. There's just been a lot of like, oh, that was all right. But if we were to say disappointment, just like not, I don't even want to say disappointment, but if we're going to answer that question, I think I did pick 2 books, and I think they're kind of surprising. Okay, so the first one is Ghost Music by Anne Yu. Now this is my second book that I've read by Anne Yu. The first one was Braised Pork, and my criticism for both of these books is the same. I think that she writes really evocative worlds, and it's very interesting, and it's dreamlike, and you know, I'm really able to see it when I'm in it, but there's something lacking, and I don't know what that is exactly, but I just feel like having finished Ghost Music about 6 weeks ago, I don't really remember a lot of it, but it is a very atmospheric book, and the author, she like really writes, she does really good food writing, I would say, and there's a lot of similarities between Ghost Music and Braised Pork, and it's not that I think that they were bad, I don't. I just think that they were missing a little something. That's the first one. Then the second book is First Love by Gwendolyn Riley. Now, I read this because I have been like on a little bit of a kick of reading books about marriage. And I read a nonfiction book and I read some fiction books, and that's like really, things are like brimming up in here. I'm really interested in reading about marriage for whatever reason. And I think that First Love was not as focused on the marriage as much as I would have liked it to have been. I think that there was lots of humor in it, there were some really good sentences, but I just needed it to be a little bit longer, or to have a little bit more, or to center ourselves in the husband-wife relationship, because that's not what actually takes up a lot of the time. Like in the beginning, she has this big digression where she's talking about her first love. It is called First Love, but like she talks about that experience of the 3 years that were kind of wasted on this almost situationship where this guy wasn't really giving her the time of day, and he never would have because he actually lived in a different country, and so she really wasn't going off of much. But then, so that took up a section, but once we cover that, we don't really like harken back to that, or we never really look at why she chose her current husband, like in relation to that, or like is there a connection there? Like the author and the protagonist never really took us in that direction. But what this novel did do really well is show us the mother-daughter relationship and that dynamic, which is quite like humorous and a little like, there's tension for sure, but it was really well done. And I think her other novel that's quite popular, Phantom Dreams, maybe, is about a mother-daughter relationship, so I think maybe I will pick that up just to like, maybe that is what Gwendolyn Riley really excels at, is that exploration of the mother-daughter relationship. But when it came to the marriage aspect of this novel, I wanted more drama, more spice, more arguments, more tension, and that's not what I got. So that's what I would have to say for my biggest disappointments. You know, that's it. Excluding the international booker stuff, there definitely was IB stuff. Sorry, my water bottle dropped. There definitely was international booker stuff that was a disappointment, but like we know that. You've seen the vids. We don't need to go back there. It's done. I've washed myself from that. Okay, and then the next one is The Biggest Surprise, and for this I'm actually going to do Birnam Wood. So this was, I wanted to do Exalted, but I'll switch it up for you guys. I'm going to say Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton. She won the Booker a few years ago for The Luminaries. Birnam Wood is a whole lot of fun. I think it gets, a lot of people talk about it on booktube. They kind of describe it as a thriller, and I think that's very, very misleading because you might expect there to be a whole lot of action. There really isn't. She really does. I've not even told you what the book is about. The book follows a collective, these 20-year-olds who are environmentally inclined, and they've decided that, you know, anytime there's pockets of land, they're gonna go and farm it, grow vegetables, gardens, whatever. The thing is most of them think that they're doing it on public land. Turns out they're actually not, and their leader is kind of, not nefarious, but she's a little morally gray, and she will just do things to her advantage. They're a little bit like vigilante gardening. That's what's happening, which is kind of funny. But anyway, so this group of people gets mixed up with this millionaire from America who's got his own nefarious scheme going on. So they're mixing. He's quite, sorry, my nails are really bad. He's that was a tangent. that was an aside, but I do want to mention that. So gets involved with them, and then you're kind of trying to figure out, like, you're trying to suss out what's going on, what's happening, where is this going. But Eleanor Catton takes us into the head of like every single major player. So there's probably about, even some of the people who you don't expect to be major players. So we're probably inside the heads of like 8 or 9 people, and she really goes deep into a like full-on proper character study. It's very like intense in that regard. So I think you could say the book's quite slow. Like literally nothing happens. There's no action. But it was a lot of fun to read. I found it to be a lot of fun to read, and I think whatever the question was, that's what I'm going with. Number 7 is favorite author. Favorite new author. I'm kind of curious to see what I said about this last year, and in many regards, like, the only authors that I think I've read more than one of their works this year would be Virginia Woolf, and then have I mentioned that I'm reading Virginia Woolf's diaries very, very slowly, guys, like hella slow. But Virginia Woolf, and then also Jean Rhys. In Jan, I read her unfinished autobiography, and then I just finished Quartet by her, which was her debut novel. So favorite's like a really tough one for me because I actually don't have very many favorite authors, but I would say that it seems like I'm on a very big Virginia Woolf, Jean Rhys sort of kick and exploration. I am like quite interested in modernist writing and that time period of writing, so that's just what's happening this year. Okay, number 8 is kind of a silly question. 8 and 9 I think are both silly questions, but whatever, we're here for it, we're gonna do it. Number 8 is newest fictional crush, and I am going to say The Husband and My Husband. And you might be like, why, if you read the book? But by the end of it, that's love. It's not, but it's quite enticing, and I really am, that's a keeper. He was a keeper, let me tell you that. Okay, and then the newest favorite character, that's the next question. I don't know. Everyone's kind of forgettable. Who cares? Hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have a character I've read who I'm like, yeah, they're awesome. They're the bee's knees. I love them. Number 10 is books that made you cry. If I'm to be honest with you guys, I kind of cry somewhat often. So there's definitely been a whole bunch of these books that have made me cry, but I can't remember which one specifically. And it's not like full on tears, right? I'm not like sobbing. It's just, get a little teary-eyed. Maybe 1 or 2 tears trickles down the corner of my eye. So I do know for sure Ninth Building, this is so surprising, Ninth Building made me cry only because there's one of the scenes that he writes is about this young girl who dies in the Great Northern Waste, and her father comes and like kind of builds a tombstone for her, and that like parental love, and like really made me think about my father, and I just cried. I cried a little, what can you say? Okay, the books that made you happy. So obviously, as previously mentioned, I think you can pick up that I did really enjoy Exalted, My Husband, Birnam Wood. Those were all very fun books to me. Another book that I thought was fun that I've not mentioned yet was A Way of Life Like Any Other by Darcy O'Brien, which was the story of, kind of very autobiographical. Darcy was the child of two former Hollywood actors and actresses in like the 1920s, I think he was born, and he's showing his childhood, and there's a lot of very like over the top, very like theatrical moments in there that were quite a bit of fun. Another book that I thought was a lot of fun, but it's also it was deeply upsetting at the same time, but fun because it was quite gossipy, was Lives of the Wives, which is a nonfiction book exploring a kind of a group biography, which I've learned is a thing I do seem to enjoy. So our author is looking at the relationships of 5 different, mostly literary couples, and kind of looking at what that dynamic is like. And so we're looking at we're looking at people like Elsa Morante and Alberto Moravio. We're looking at Roald Dahl and his wife, the actress, I think Patricia Neal. And then we had Elaine Dundee, who wrote The Dead Avocado. She was married to the theater critic Kenneth Tian, I think his last name was, and then there's like two other literary couples. I thought it was so fascinating. I loved it. Maybe if you already are quite aware of these couples and know their histories, it might be like kind of you already know it, but to me, I didn't know that much about them. I thought it was really fascinating. That was the book that really set me off on this path of really being like, okay, marriage is something I want to read a lot of. And the next question is the most beautiful book you bought this year. So I think I bought this in the end of May or June. What month are we in? I don't know. It's called Gwen John, Art and Life in London and Paris. So Gwen John is a painter. Some author recently wrote a book about her called like Gwen and Me, where basically she's writing letters to Gwen, so you might be slightly aware of this author. I wasn't really aware of her until I did something that forced me to have to, get to know her a little bit, and I just by chance, it was like one of those, it was like almost serendipitous, I don't know, something's going on in the atmosphere. So I learned about this character and I was like, I want to learn more about her. Then I walked into the bookstore and a new autobiography is out by her. So I think the book is actually like really well done. You have so many images, and I don't know, it has like it's actually a very heavy book. It has a nice weight to it. It's well worth the money, I think. And yeah, that I think is the prettiest book I've bought. And question number 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I was thinking of doing like a full-on dedicated video to this because there are like about 6 very, very big books, some of which I'm already in the middle of, that I would, God willing, like to finish before the end of the year. But to give you a teaser to that video, which may or may not happen, 3 of those books include Crime and Punishment, Solenoid, and Middlemarch. I think I reached a point in the middle of the year, if we're looking at the 6 months part of the middle of the year, so like about Feb or March, maybe after IB, where I was just like so dissatisfied with the books that I was reading, and I was like, I would really love to read some classics. So Middlemarch is one of them. There are a few others that I've picked up that I'm like, I really want to immerse myself in brilliant writing, even if it is challenging, because that's what I'm interested in. Like, I want really, really good writing. That's something that I gravitate towards more than plot necessarily. Like, I want wonderful language, and I'm hoping to get that from Middlemarch and a few of the other classics, which I have not mentioned just yet. But yeah, that's the final question. I think you tag other people, yeah, right? I want to tag everyone. If you're down, do it up. Yeah, that was my 6 months of reading. It's been a mixed bag in some regards, but hopefully, God willing, by the end of the year, more reading happens, more reading, more life, more writing. And with that, I'm gonna wrap this up, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks.